G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with clip number 3 of John Wyndham's story, The Puffball Menace, written sometime between 1933 and 1939, which discusses asymmetric warfare and the Third World versus the West. Chapter 3, The Danger Increases. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Chapter 3, The Danger Increases. Stuff, said Major Forbes with some violence. Stuff and nonsense. You ought to have known better, young man, than to come to me with an old wives' tale like that. Ralph gave up his attempt to convince the old man. After Arnold's warning of the previous evening, he had caught the earliest possible train for the West Country and travelled all night. There had not been any time to lose. So far as he knew, the enormous puffballs might burst of their own accord at any hour, quite apart from the danger of one of them receiving an accidental puncture and spreading its spores about the neighbourhood. He had arrived, tired and anxious, to be greeted by both his own and Dorothy's father with complete disbelief. In vain he put the cases of rash forward as evidence and quoted Arnold's warning. It was useless. Each, at the back of his mind, seemed determined that this was some deep ruse by rival growers to get him out of the way. And even if the thing was a fungus, what man worth his salt was going to be scared by a mere puffball, however big? No, Major Forbes repeated firmly. You say that your mother and my daughter are willing to leave. Of course they are. Women are always wanting to run up to London for some fal-lal or other. Take them along with you. The change will do them good. But don't come bothering me. And there was a similar interview with his own father. Mrs. Waite attempted to smooth over her husband's irritation. Now, don't worry your father any more, dear. You must see that he doesn't want to come. I should like to go to London for a week or so, but don't bother him. I should have to go soon in any case to do a little shopping. But you don't understand. Mother, this is really serious. It's dangerous. These things he is growing are rank poison. Mrs. Waite looked a little distressed. Do you really think so, dear? I mean, it seems so unlikely. And the people who sent them don't seem to think so. They definitely said they were vegetables. Never mind what they said. Take it from me, or rather take it from Arnold, who is an expert, that these things are deadly and must be destroyed. Eh? What's that? Mr. Waite chimed in. Destroyed? I'd like to see anyone attempt to destroy my specimen. I'd show him what's what. There's still a law in the land. You'll promise me, won't you, John, not to eat any of it while I'm away? Mrs. Waite spoke as though her presence should nullify the plant's poisonous quality. Her husband ungraciously conceded the point. All right, he said gruffly, I'll promise you that much. Though I repeat that I think the whole thing is a scare. Well, if you won't come, I can't make you, said Ralph, but I do beg of you. Again he went over the details of Arnold's warning, only to succeed in thinning his father's temper and his own. At last he turned back to Mrs. Waite. This is a waste of time. You'd better pack your things and get ready, Mother. You mean now, dear? Yes, at once. Oh, but I couldn't possibly be ready before tomorrow. There are such a lot of things which just have to be finished off. Ralph went around again to see Dorothy. We'll have to wait until tomorrow, he told her. I can't make them believe there's any danger in delay. Well, one day won't make much difference, she suggested. It might. I want to get you both out of here as soon as possible. Any moment it might be too late. We'll be right away this time tomorrow. Let's talk about something else now. I can't think of anything else. I've heard Arnold on the subject and you haven't. Let's go out and have a look at the brutes. Hello, said Arnold, entering Ralph's office. Where the devil have you been for the last 2 days? Down in Cornwall, trying to make my people clear out. Did you? Got Dorothy and my mother up here. Neither of the fathers would shift. Stubborn old fools. What have you been up to? Arnold disregarded the question. You've done all you could? Of course I have, short of kidnapping the old blighters. Arnold looked grave. I'm afraid the news is rather serious, he began. The morning after our chat, I went round to see a fellow I know at the Ministry of Health, and they welcomed me there with open arms. This thing is a good many times bigger than we thought it was. The authorities have been minimising. Didn't want to ruin the holiday traffic or some rot like that. They told me that there have been hundreds of cases of the rash and several dozen deaths. Not only that, but soon after the dead have been buried, those yellow puffballs start growing from the graves. Their experts were sure as I that this was a form of fungus has never been heard of before, and most of us are pretty certain that somebody's been up to some rather ugly crossbreeding with malice aforethought. They issued orders yesterday that no more of the things were to be planted, but that was useless. Already round the centres where the things have burst, the place is littered with the balls. Growing already? Thousands of them. Around Newquay and Bodmin and several other places, and nobody dare touch them. But aren't they doing anything? Destroying them? How? Can't they spray them with acids or something? Do you realise that the first lot hasn't reached its natural bursting point yet? All this second crop is the result of accidental breakage. God knows what will happen if they're allowed to burst. Nobody seems to know how to tackle the situation, but they're not lying down. They see the danger all right, and they're going after it day and night. You can see yourself that the problem is how to destroy the balls without liberating the spores. There must be some way. Oh, they'll find a way, but it's got to be drastic and well organised. The thing they're most anxious about at present is that there shall be no panic. You know what people are like when they lose their heads. If they go wild and start smashing the things wholesale, there'll be hell to pay. You can take it from me that the departments concerned are already making things hum behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the first crop of balls must be pretty nearly ripe. Ralph searched the lounge of the hotel where his mother and Dorothy were staying. He eventually found Mrs. Waite occupying a comfortable armchair in a secluded corner. He greeted her and seated himself beside her. "Where's Dorothy?" he asked a few minutes later. "Getting ready?" "Ready?" repeated Mrs. Waite inquiringly. "We arranged to go out and dance this evening." "Oh, dear me, of course. Then you didn't hear from me. She said she would telephone." "She didn't? What was it about?" "Well, she won't be going out tonight. You see, she's gone down to Cornwall." "She's what?" shouted Ralph in a voice which echoed across the lounge. "Yes, dear, she said she felt she must go to Cornwall," Mrs. Waite repeated placidly. "But why didn't you stop her? Surely you realise the danger. Good God, she may have caught the rash. She may die of it." Mrs. Waite looked a little shocked. "Well, dear, I did tell her that I didn't think you would like it, but she seemed so anxious about her father. Such a nice trait in a young girl, I always think, that I didn't feel it was right to interfere." Ralph made no reply. His mother, glancing at him, saw that his face was drawn into tight creases. There was an expression in his eyes which hurt her. For the first time she began to appreciate that there was real fear behind his actions and talk of the last few days. Futilely, she started to talk when she should have kept silent. "Of course, this may not be so very dangerous after all. I expect it's just another of these scares. Things will be all right in the end, and we shall all have a good laugh at our fears. Don't you worry, dear, I expect." "Good gracious!" Ralph was roused out of his thoughts to see what had caused her exclamation of surprise. He looked up to find himself facing his father and Major Forbes. An hour ago he would have been pleased to see them and cheered by the thought of the whole party reunited. But now his greeting was cold. Major Forbes looked around him. "And where is Dorothy?" he asked. Ralph answered him bitterly. "She's gone to save you." End of chapter 3. I think we'll stop it and start a new one.